Okay, let's get right into it. Today, we're diving into an examination of what our source material calls one of the strangest statistical anomalies in modern history. It's a story that sits right at the intersection of immense financial power and a truly disturbing event.
You know, the source material we're looking at today doesn't start with an answer. Instead, it starts with a profoundly unsettling question. What are the mathematical odds of a seemingly random, violent event being so directly connected to one of the most powerful entities on Earth? And there it is. This is the absolute core of it all. The fact that this entire explainer is here to investigate. A connection so improbable, so statistically unlikely, that the source material argues it absolutely demands a closer look.
But before we can even begin to wrap our heads around this anomaly, the source material argues we first have to understand the system in which it appeared. So, let's start by looking at what it describes as the architecture of control.
Look at this number, $10 trillion. That's the value of assets managed by BlackRock. Now, to put that into perspective for you, our source material claims that if these assets were a country's GDP, it would be the third largest economy on the planet. The material describes it not just as an investment firm, but as a private empire.
Now, this slide illustrates a really key point from our source. It argues that market competition is, well, an illusion. As you can see, whether it's tech, media, or pharma, the top institutional shareholders of these supposedly rival corporations are often the exact same small group of firms, with BlackRock and Vanguard consistently right there at the top.
So how do they manage all this? The source identifies a key component of BlackRock's power as its proprietary technology, Aladdin. It's described as a kind of central nervous system for global finance. But get this, it isn't just for BlackRock's own assets. It's a risk management platform that monitors over $20 trillion of assets globally, influencing investment decisions on a massive, massive scale.
So this quote really gets to the heart of it. The crucial point the source makes is that it views this entity as less of an investor and more of an enforcer. It alleges that BlackRock uses its immense financial power and its technology to execute a specific agenda on a global scale.
And this is where the investigation in our source material takes a really sharp turn. It pivots, connecting this system of financial control to a much, much darker history from the intelligence world. This is where the story goes from finance into the shadows of psychological operations.
This slide really illustrates the source's theory on the evolution of mind control. It suggests that these techniques never really disappeared, they just evolved. The source alleges that the research moved from targeting individuals in labs to conditioning the entire population through the social media algorithms on the screens we use every single day. According to declassified documents cited in the source material, the CIA actively pursued techniques to create what it called programmed assassins. These would be operatives who could carry out a mission and then trigger a self-erase command, like an involuntary suicide, leaving absolutely no trail back to their handlers. And this slide lays out the alleged blueprint. It's a step-by-step method for creating what the source calls the perfect deniable operative. And according to the material we're analyzing, this concept is absolutely crucial for understanding the anomaly at the very heart of our story. Okay, so now let's return to our central mystery, but this time armed with the context our sources provided on financial power and the history of mind control. This is where the pieces are meant to come together.
And so we arrive back at the central, mind-boggling fact of this case. The source argues that in a system as tightly monitored and controlled as the one it has described, a coincidence of this magnitude simply cannot exist. It calls this a statistical ghost.
This brings us to the most chilling interpretation offered in the material. It suggests the connection wasn't some mistake or a random accident, but a deliberate and almost arrogant message from what it calls the system directly to the public. So the source material concludes by offering only two ways to interpret this statistical impossibility. On the one hand, maybe it's a glitch in the simulation, a failure in the algorithm that accidentally exposes the underlying code. On the other hand, maybe it's a form of psychological warfare, a deliberate message to show that the lone wolf was their asset all along. So what's the key takeaway here? Well, the source material doesn't provide a definitive answer. Instead, it argues that the real importance lies in understanding the profound weight of the question itself. And this is the final provocative thought our source material leaves us with. If it's true that there are no coincidences of this magnitude, and a glitch this significant can appear, well, what does that imply about the reality we think we see every single day?